Hello, everyone, and welcome to a spooktacular episode 3 of Movies I Seen This Month. Got a nice curveball for you this time. Driving home the point that the main intent for this is for me to catch up on movies I have on the backlog or just movies I'm interested in, and not really talking about reviewing or discussing the most recent modern blockbusters. So, if you were intending for me to stay on the hot plate, the green thumb of media, I'm sorry to burst your bubble so quickly. So today we're going to be talking about a movie I guarantee you would never guess. But unfortunately, due to the nature of titling and labeling things, you already know what movie I sort of spur of the moment watched. But just so I can still feel a little special about this, if you wouldn't mind, please act surprised when I say the title. Episode 3 is going to be on Pet Semetary, the 2019 reimagining? We'll just go with that. And for those of you who acted surprised, thank you. And to those of you who didn't, I know you're too radical and regular cool to give any effort, but I appreciate you anyway. Now, I feel like I set the president down and told him my episodes have to be 30 minutes long, so I guess that's what I'm shooting for now. So good luck to me for making this last about 30 minutes, and good luck to you for listening for 30 minutes, but I believe in both of us. I think we can do this. If we just sit down and work together, we can make this happen. Okay, on to the movie-specific stuff now. As per the norm, I got a little preamble just to get you ready for this review discussion. I have seen both the original Pet Sematary movies, and I loved them both. I have never read the book, and the first movie I saw was number 2, and for about 10 years I thought that was the original, and I didn't know the first existed, if that makes sense. And then like 10 years after I saw 2, I saw 1, and I was like, okay, 2 is much better, but 1 is not bad. And also in general, when it comes to remakes, reimaginings, whatever, I don't have a natural hatred for them or anything. It really depends on the movie. Like, I saw Halloween, the original, and it was a pretty good movie. It's pretty cool, but I had no intention of seeing any of the remakes of the movie because the concept was cool just for one time for me. A crazy psycho dude going around killing people on Halloween. It's a fun concept for a movie once, but sequels didn't interest me, remakes didn't interest me, so I never really bothered to watch them. In addition, when there are remakes and reimaginings that I am interested in, I watch them as their own movie. I don't compare them to the original in the original is the best, let me make sure I hate this rebranding sort of way. Like, of course I'm going to make cross points from one to the other, but not in a inherently deconstructive way, if that makes sense. I don't set out to hate a rebooting of a franchise just because I like the original. I give myself a chance to like the reboot and see it as its own movie. And if it has ties into the original, cool. If it's a beat for beat remake of the original, as long as there is some modernization to it, then it's pretty much a movie I liked 2.0. And who cares? It's not that big of a deal. So, Pet Sematary 2019, huh? Let's talk about it. Directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer of I Have No Idea fame. That's not a movie, I just am not familiar with any of their works. Written by Matt Greenberg and Jeff Bueller. And you may know Jeff Bueller for doing the screenplay to Grudge and Jacob's Ladder, the new remakes that are coming out, to clarify. So, close. We were close with that one, but, can't win them all, or any of them in this case. As for the actors in the movie go, I actually enjoyed the whole cast, especially the little girl, Ellie. Whoever played her was really good. Dad character, he looked so familiar. I know I've seen him in something, but I just couldn't place what it was. In the vein of the first one, he was probably the weakest link for the beginning of the movie, and then he had a really interesting arc in like the last third of the movie until the very end, which he sort of fell off again for me. The mom was really good. The little boy was good. But my boy John Lithgow, he was killing it. Now, I will say he was no original Judd. I forget the guy's name who played Judd in the first, but he's a pretty famous actor. And he was super good. He played a good old boy. Whereas John Lithgow is just a good old man. Which I feel like John Lithgow has played a good old man for 30 years at this point. He's very good in the role. And as for the overall, like, visual style, atmosphere, scenery of the movie, I actually really enjoyed it. It's got a nice sort of... It's hard to describe, but like a nice blend between like a good 80s horror movie and a modern horror movie. It's a really good halfway point between that. It doesn't, at least to me, I couldn't tell. It doesn't rely too much on CGI or blue screen or anything like that. A lot of the effects seem pretty practical. I mean, I don't have the most discerning eye, so I can't tell too much apart from each other. But like the monster, in quote, effects are very good, and the scenery in general is really good. Like the scenes where they're going out into the woods are really nice. It's got, man, it's so hard to describe, but I would say maybe like a very modernized Are You Afraid of the Dark look to it. Like when they're in the woods, it has the fog machines on blast, and it sort of varies from scene to scene, but like when they're in the front of the woods, it's pretty much realistic. It's pretty much real woods, like they're going through actual woods. And I'm sure there's some color correction going on or something to make it a little more spooky. But the deeper they go into the woods, it's like a hybrid between a set and real woods. It's got that look where directly around the actors, there are definitely trees like around them, and they're probably real trees, but the further away from the actors you go, the more just like pitch black it is. So it's not like that you see them and they're deep in the woods and they're just in this super dense forest and you see trees forever. It's like you see the woods around them, but you can see in the background it's like an infinite black void, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it is very stylistic, so I enjoy that. And like I said, it's sort of cornball, and I'm super hesitant to say cheesy because it doesn't look bad. It's charming. Charming is maybe a better word than cheesy. I really liked it, and the whole movie sort of has that vibe to it. A nice, charming, spooky vibe. Now, unfortunately, the good acting, effects, and visuals of the movie sort of play to the hand of a story that, in my opinion, is doomed to be botched from the get-go. Like I said, I've never read the book of Pet Semetary, but I've seen the first two movies, and of course I saw this movie. And just based on seeing those three films, I would say it's probably impossible to tell a good Pet Semetary story in movie form, in movie length. It just doesn't seem like you are able to get out all the information you need to like fully encapsulate the story and what Stephen King was going for. So you have to choose what bullet points you want to sort of expound upon when you're making a movie about Pet Semetary, and go into varying details about that. And I'm not sure if they took the lots of bullet points touched upon lightly out here, or a very minuscule amount of bullet points and expanded on thoroughly. Like I said, I don't know the source material, but the movie does feel rushed by the end of it. There are a lot of scenes of family building, things like that, which, are serviceable enough, I guess, but I could have done with less of those and more of the last half to last quarter of the movie. That probably could have been expanded on a lot more. It would have been more interesting. But there is a lot of slow build up to things that aren't really paid out too well. And before I continue, I'll do a little double warning here. I'll do like a basic Pet Semetary in general spoiler warning, and then I'll do a this movie specific warning. But first, before that, I'm going to try to give a spoiler-free synopsis of the movie, which is hard to do with horror movies, but whatever, I'll give it a shot. So the movie starts out, family moves out into the country because they're a bit tired of the hustle and bustle of city life. Dad is a doctor, mom is a mom, kids are kids. The mom and the dad have a daughter and a baby boy and a cat named Church. And they move out into the middle of nowhere. There's a city like miles away from them, but they have a neighbor pretty close to them called Judd, played by the wonderful John Lithgow. And I guess they find out they have a pet cemetery on their property, and the more they learn about the pet cemetery, the more they have to use it, the darker things get. And that's all you can really say without getting at least too spoilery about Pet Semetary in general. So skip to this time. I'm going to edit in afterwards right here if you want to avoid spoilers. Skip to 29:28. Alright, cool. Hopefully that wasn't too long of a silence after that. Anyway. Okay, so into Pet Semetary, general spoilers. Family moves into their home away from home, and they have a cat named Church, and eventually the cat is found on the side of the road, run over by a big semi-truck by Judd. Judd calls over the dad, and he's like, "Hey, your cat's dead." And Judd's like, "Oh, shoot. My little girl Ellie loves that cat." And Judd's like, "Well, don't tell her. It would break her heart. Let's just take care of it tonight." And so the dad goes in. The kids are out trick-or-treating. He tells the mom character that the cat's dead and they're going to take care of it tonight. And the mom's like, "Please don't tell Ellie. Let's just say the cat ran away." And this is probably about the third scene where we understand the dad is super overbearing about wanting to tell everybody about death, because Ellie is pretty young and the mom wants to shield Ellie from the horrors of death. But the dad's like, "Hey, death is part of life. It's inevitable. Let's just say the cat's dead. Let's just say she dies eventually and it's okay." And I mean, I guess in a very broad sense, that's not a horrible mindset to have, maybe, but it's made extra awkward by the fact that and once again, this is Pet Semetary in general, spoilers, but it's made more awkward in the fact that the mom has a backstory where her sister had some disease that made her bedridden, and through the negligence of the mom character when they were kids, it caused the death of her sister, and she feels super responsible for that, which, I mean, she sort of was. It's bad to say, but the dad brings up a good point that her parents shouldn't have left her in charge of the super in need sister. But the point is, the mom has a very hard time dealing with that, and the dad's like, "Get over it. Death is real. There's nobody looking down on anybody from heaven. We don't need to lie to Ellie. Treat her like it's Santa Claus." So that's a little bit of drama that gets injected throughout, and that's one of the many points that doesn't really pay off too much aside from just being for scares. The whole mother's past thing with her sister. It's, I don't know. I mean, I guess it sort of deepens the drama between the dad and mom, but it never really pays off. So it's just sort of wasted screen time. Another scene that happens early on that is sort of a waste and only brought up to sort of enhance a scene in the last quarter of the movie is the children funeral procession that is shown in the trailer a lot and is at the beginning of the movie, where when they first get to their home, they walk into the woods and they see like 4 kids with animal masks on, and they're playing drums and stuff, and they're carrying a dead dog to put in the pet cemetery. And it's super creepy and stuff, I guess, but like nothing ever comes of that. You never see any of them again. The only thing that happens is one of them leaves one of their masks on a grave, and it comes back as a mostly pointless disguise later on in the movie, which I'll get into with movie-specific spoilers, but that's for a little bit later. And then maybe the last useless scene I'll go over before I get into hard movie spoilers is the scene where Judd and Dad are talking about the bring people back to life graveyard. The revival graveyard is what I'll call it. In the previous movies, it's either not touched on at all, or it's just like it's a mystical place, or they do the whole Indian burial ground thing, which of course is a big no-no, but that was like in 90s, 80s movies. They didn't know any better back then. But anyway, there's a really... The more I think about it, the dumber it gets. And I don't like calling things dumb, surprisingly, but the scene is really dumb. So after Judd and the dad bury the cat, and it comes back, and they're all like, oh, my cat's back from the dead, what's going on, what happened? The dad goes over to Judd's place, and I don't know if they're drinking or not. I don't know if it's super relevant either. But the dad's trying to get an explanation out of Judd, and Judd brings out this book, and he's like, I don't know what's wrong with that place over there, but according to legends, the ancient tribes that used to live here fled that place because they said it's evil. And they said it brings back the dead, and the demon Wendigo has some influence over there. But that's all just folk tales and nonsense. You can't be sure if it's true. And he says that after both of them discuss the dead cat coming back, and he talks about how he had a dog that died and they buried, and it came back, and it was also evil when it came back. And then, so he says, we brought cats back from the dead, and then he goes into this is all folklore, hooey-dooey nonsense part of his speech. And then they go back to talking about how the animals came back from the dead. So it's just a very weird and clumsy way to handle it. Like, either flesh it out a little bit more somehow, or just nix it totally together. Just, it's a magical burial ground and nobody knows anything about it. It just brings people back from the dead, which would really, I mean, in a way make it sort of scarier, right? It's just this magical evil energy thing. And Judd brings up at one point that it has like a pull over you once you've used it once. So, I mean, that's enough for motivation. Because earlier on when they bury the cat, Judd's like, hey, you don't want to make Ellie sad, right? Well, follow me to the back side of the cemetery where we'll bury the cat. And the whole time the dad's like, what are we doing? Why are we going back here? What's the point of this? And Judd's like, just keep following me. And they walk back into the Are You Afraid of the Dark Woods? And they're burying the cat. And the dad's like, no. First Judd's like, they have the cat in a sack. And he just throws the cat sack to Dad's feet. And he's like, you gotta bury it. And the dad just silently does it. And then Judd's like, and you gotta put a cairn on top too, which is like a stack of stones. So the dad does all this, and the dad's like, after he does all that, he's on the ground, and he's all dirty, and he's looking up at Judd, and he's like, Judd, what did we do out here tonight? And Judd's like, and he's smoking while he's saying this. He goes, we're burying the dead. And then the scene ends, and the dad doesn't ask any questions or anything until the scene I was just talking about later on where they're drunk. And the dad's like, the cat's back in evil. So a little bit less in that department. There's too much useless, awkward, ultimately pointless explanation about something that could have just been left a spooky mystery. Like, nothing ever comes from his explanation. We don't see a Wendigo. We don't see anybody from the ancient tribe come back and be like, our people left here for a reason. You guys shouldn't be here. And then Judd's like, this is a bunch of hooey-dooey. Alright, so I suppose at this point I will get into this specific movie spoilers. So let's just get right into it. So here you go. Skip to 2928 right now. Alright, now we are in double spoiler territory, so all the gloves are off, and I wear 5 pairs of gloves. Alright, so one thing I will say I enjoyed about this movie, and it is a big spoiler, is that they swapped out who is a zombie kid. And it's not Gage this time, which is the little boy's name, it's Ellie. And for me, the jury is still out on how smart these filmmakers are. Because up until the point happens where you know one of the kids is going to die, Gage is in like 2 minutes of the movie total. He's like the most absent and unfleshed out character I've ever seen. Hyperbolically speaking, of course. But it was up until the truck scene happened. I was like, are they really going to kill Gage when he said 3 lines? Who's going to give a crap? But they swap it up, and it's Ellie. And it's really cool. It was actually quite surprising. Which I gotta give it up again for the actress who played Ellie. She was really good, and she's also really good as Zombie Ellie. And the zombie makeup is really good too. Makeup / costume, whatever. It's very good. And the scene right after the dad buries her, maybe my favorite scene in the movie, because it's set up to where the dad has knowledge, like he knows completely what's gonna happen after he buries his daughter. So he grave robs his daughter. He goes to the cemetery and digs her up, the real cemetery, and then he goes and buries her in the reviving burial ground. And then he comes back home, he sets out a fresh pair of clothes for her on her bed, leaves the door unlocked, and then he goes to his room to sleep. And he's just awake, waiting for her to come home. And then for like the next 2.5 to 3 minutes, it's just mostly totally ambience. You hear like the door creak open, then you hear the floorboards squeaking, and it's just totally quiet. And then the dad gets out of bed, he's like slowly creeping out into the house to try to find Ellie, to make sure it's her. And he's walking, he's going downstairs, he hears like an owl hooting or whatever, and some night bugs chittering. And he goes outside, because the door is wide open. And he doesn't see Ellie, he turns around and sees muddy footprints. So he follows him back inside, and it takes him down to the basement. And there's like this little alcove, little cubby thing in the basement that's like covered up by a sheet. I guess it was Ellie's fort. So he goes and he opens up the curtain, and he sees one of the animal masks there. So he's a little disheartened, but then you see Ellie standing behind him as the camera lifts up, and it's not like a jump scare or anything. She's just like, Daddy? And then he turns around and he's all excited and he hugs her, and she's like, where am I? And it's like a little creepy, because you know what's going on. And then there's a very, like, almost sort of sad scene. Like, very weird, somber, sad scene where he's giving her a bath, trying to clean her up, and you can tell she's just dead inside by the look she has on her face. And the dad's just trying as best as he can to fool himself into thinking his daughter's back. But she's fully aware that something is not right here. And it's just a quiet, like, wide shot of her just slouched over, expressionless face. And the dad's just scrubbing her hair, trying to get it all clean. I don't know. It's just a very creepy, haunting, sad image. And then later on, she goes on a killing spree, which is pretty good. The effects are pretty good for the killings. The funeral procession finally serves its purpose, and one of the masks one of the kids is wearing, Ellie uses it as a disguise when she goes over to kill Judd because he knows what's up. And she breaks into his house. A chase happens. And eventually, she gets him collapsed on the floor, and he's looking over her. She's looking over him with the mask, and she lifts the mask up, and she has the face of Judd's apparent wife, which we just get like one name drop of. And if you know Pet Semetary, you know Judd tried to revive his wife, and it didn't work. So, it did work, but then he had to kill her. So Ellie's wearing the face of his wife, and she's like, hey, I'm in hell now because of what you did to me, and Ellie's in hell now because of what you made the dad do, so now we're going to kill you and bring you to hell with us forever. And it's marginally creepy and stuff. We saw one old picture of Judd's wife, and we got a name drop of her once, so it's like, yeah, sure, okay, I'm not really invested in this, but it's menacing, I suppose. Ellie continues her killing spree, making her mom have a hallucination, I guess, of herself turning into her sister and being bedridden, and her sister coming up to kill her. Once again, pointless, because it's just an illusion. It's creepy to watch, sure, I guess, but it doesn't have any depth in the story. It's not even like Judd's wife where the sister's talking. It's just something. It's just some demon power Ellie apparently has now. Just makes her hallucinate before she just normally stabs her in the gut with a kitchen knife. So she's going on a rampage, murderous rampage. And the dad locks Gage in a car because he knows S is hitting the fan. And he's like, Gage, no matter what happens, don't open this door for anybody. And he gets knocked out. Ellie buries the mom. Mom comes back from the dead. Dad tries to stop Ellie by choking her out in the graveyard, but revived mom zombie kills dad. And then fade to black, fade to morning, and you have Gage waking up in a car, and he's looking out the front window, and he sees mom, dad, and sister walking towards the car. And I can't tell, he's a kid actor. You do what you can with a kid actor that young. And I can't tell if he's concerned or confused or thankful. But he's just staring blankly out the car. And the whole family walks up. And the dad goes over to the side of the car. And he's like going to lean down to look in. And then you get the interior shot of Gage in the car again. And then I don't know what happens. You hear a boop boop. Like the sound of an alarm or something. Like a disarming of alarm on the car is sort of what it sounds like. And then the screen fades to black. So I don't know if that was Gage turning the alarm on or the dad turning the alarm off. I don't know. It's just weird. And if my spoiler description of the ending seemed rushed, that's because it was pretty much in real time. And that's how rushed the movie was. Alright. So clearly, I'm breaking my 30-minute rule here, but whatever. Yeah, it's kind of hard talking about horror movies like this that are just horror movies. With Midsummer, it was a lot easier because there was a lot to talk about. A lot of dynamics, a lot of good characters. This is a lot more traditional horror movie. So it's a little bit harder to recommend. There's not a lot of substance there. I will say, I saw the movie for cheap on Amazon Prime. So if you have that option, and I can't fault this movie's atmosphere. I will give it that. The story is rushed because I think a Pet Semetary movie, if you're confining that story to one movie, it has to be rushed. So it's going to be a little silly. But I really enjoyed the atmosphere of this movie, the scenery and the settings, and something I've discovered doing this show is that I love unique and fun transitions, and there's a handful of them in this movie. There's a couple of really cool transitions. So if you like artsy fartsy, unique, cool transitions, then it's also another reason to check this movie out. But if you're looking for something a little more serious with a good story, you can probably avoid Pet Semetary 2019. All that being said, one final complaint I have is that I guess the tagline for this movie is "Dead is better," which can be heard here.
Sometimes dead is better.
And I really think they missed an opportunity to go full on with the rhyme scheme and make John Lithgow say this.
Sometimes deader is better.
See? How much cooler is that? Sometimes deader is better. Sometimes deader is better. That would have been great. Anyway, thanks for listening to this extra long episode of movies I've seen this month. If all goes according to plan, the next episode will be on Blade Runner 2049. But we'll see what happens. I have like 5 people in my life really trying to get me to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So we'll see which one of those gets done first. But, yeah, that's it. Until next time. Thank you.